We're going to go ahead and get started, but before we do, let me go over a few housekeeping items. First, today's webinar is going to be recorded, and we'll send you a recording to your email tomorrow morning. Second, we'll have questions at the end, so please feel free to ask any questions in the webinar control panel. You can do so at any time during the webinar or as we close and the opportunity for questions arises. Of course, if you don't have any questions during the webinar or you think of something after you close the GoToWebinar window, you'll have the option to give feedback for our presenter, Kevin, and give him some feedback on the content, the webinar overall, as well as ask any additional questions that you may have. With that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Kevin, and he'll kick us off.
Hello, everyone. This is a New Relic webinar on Show Me Where I'm Spending the Money. We have over 15,000 customers that we help manage their digital business. We want to be the first best place for you to look to understand your digital business. Our vision is to be that first place, from mobile and browser down through your core applications, all the way to your infrastructure. No other company has this level of full stack insight, which is critical to running a modern business. Let's focus on one customer and a quote that they have. With the New Relic platform, we get deep metrics across all the interdependent parts of our application. It gives us great synchronization across the company, from the board of directors to our support staff, because we're all looking at the same data. Now let's go into a little bit about what the New Relic digital platform looks like. This is a typical example of a server being monitored. Change can happen in every layer. So we have application and application microservers, server OS, and virtual hardware. When we add in AWS, they have CloudWatch, and they do a great job of monitoring the EC2 instance, the virtualization, as well as the hardware, and they monitor CPU, disk, and the networking. What CloudWatch doesn't know about is the server OS, memory and file system information, processes, configuration, and the application different layers. When we add in some New Relic monitoring, we have various products that help you at different layers. We have the infrastructure layer that will monitor the server OS, APM, which will give you your application and application microservice monitoring. Browser will go through your web browser and give you monitoring from the customer experience, as well as mobile application monitoring as well. However, what we don't know, what New Relic doesn't know, is the virtualization side of things. So let's integrate these two things together. So let's take New Relic monitoring and add in some AWS integration, of which we have 20 services integrated today. So now we can bring in CPU, disk, and networking, and memory and file system, as well as processes and infrastructure components, configuration inventory, microservices, error rates, and application insight. And as you can see, it's a very good integration between the two, where AWS doesn't know what's going on inside the EC2 and the application layers. New Relic figures that out and brings that to you. Where we don't know about the AWS infrastructure, we integrate with AWS and bring that information up to our dashboards. So as you can see, our New Relic Digital Intelligence Platform gives you layering in all products that New Relic offers. They are designed for the particular teams that are responsible for managing those parts of the digital process. So customers' experience is supported by our mobile, browser, and synthetics products. The back-end team will spend time with our APM products. And your infrastructure team will spend time using our New Relic infrastructure. Today, we're going to focus on Insights dashboard with the integration on the infrastructure side. Let's get back to that quote. I want to focus very specifically on the wording interdependent parts. I'm going to focus on that and the parts of your application that are costing you money. Specifically, I'm going to show you how to gain visibility on the AWS spend as it relates to the services you are using. New Relic added the AWS billing integration in May, and since then, I've had quite a few folks ask me, how does this integration work? Where can I see some examples? And why would a customer use this? This is an example of what we're going to end up with. It's an insight dashboard, and it shows you what you're going to expect by the end of this webinar. My name is Kevin Downs. I've been in the enterprise software industry for over 20 years, the last 15 of which as a customer-facing solution architect, selling enterprise software solutions to all verticals. I'm the new Relic Senior AWS Technical Partner Manager, focusing on promoting our digital intelligence platform with customers such as yourselves to help you on your cloud journey. So we're going to have some questions that we're going to definitely answer by the end of this webinar. And I'm going to give you the basics of how to set up an AWS billing integration, both from the new Relic side as well as the AWS side. I'll show you some examples of insights, AWS billing information, using both a dashboard and a data app, and give you some examples of how this information can be used. I'll also give an example of how our customers can use our alerts functionality to send them notifications based on their AWS service usage. By the end of the webinar, each of these 3 questions will be answered. But first, the basics. Let's go through some setup. On the new Relic side, you're going to go to the infrastructure integrations page, where you're going to either integrate your first AWS account or add an additional AWS account if you already have one. This page will walk you through configuring AWS and to allow new Relic to capture billing information. It's very straightforward, very easy to set up. If you already have integrated with AWS, you're going to want to go to Infrastructure Integrations, Manage Services, and just make sure that the billing integration is set up. You may have had this integration set up a while ago before we had billing added, and billing has not yet been checked off. So just make sure it's checked off. Now don't stop there. If you do, you will receive some high-level billing information from AWS, specifically the actual spend for the AWS services you consume. It is great information. However, if you do continue on and set up budgets within AWS, you'll be able to show some pretty useful information alongside other New Relic products. Now, first things first, within AWS, you have the ability to tag the various AWS services you use. This webinar won't go into the what, why, and how of tagging in AWS. There's a lot of resources out there. But for this webinar, we'll take one application you're using AWS for and tag each component with a key value pair that makes sense. For example, we want to definitely tag EC2, S3 buckets, Elastic Load Balancer, Elastic Block Storage, Route 53 domain, VPC, RDS, etc., that you're using to support one application. And we want to make sure we tag everything. Now, once you've tagged the components of your application inside AWS, you're going to go over to the budgeting dashboard, the billing dashboard. You may have to wait a little bit for AWS to get everything updated. Sometimes those tags don't get populated to the billing dashboard as quick as you'd like. So just wait a little bit longer, but they will eventually be populated. And after you create a budget, we'll go into the next steps. So the first step is the AWS budget details. There are a couple different types of budgets. For this webinar, we're going to go through cost, but I will be showing a little bit of usage later on. So give it a name, call it the application that you're trying to monitor, set the period, and here's a little tip. If you leave the end date alone, it'll be a continuous monthly billing cycle. So you'll be able to see it month after month without having to redo this budget. The next step is where you're going to define the tag. You check off tag and you pick which one you want. In this case, we're going to select the application tag. We're going to monitor all the services that have an application tag. And the next step is which actual tag we want to pick. So in this example, I have 4 different applications I set up in my AWS environment, and you get to select them off here. Now there's a couple tips. If you don't already see the tag or the application, you might just start typing. Sometimes that will populate the fields before AWS has already done it, and it'll pop up real quickly. You can repeat these steps for any other budgets Or for example, a budget for production, development. As many tags as you have created that you want billing for, you can create multiple budgets. So back to the New Relic side. Now with that done, you will receive AWS billing information about your budgets within 1 to 4 hours. To view the AWS billing dashboard, go to New Relic Integrations and select the Billing Budgets Dashboard link next to the billing integration. And this is what the default dashboard looks like. We have cost by service, and we're also showing some various other billing information. The actual amount for some different ones, and you can mouse over those icons on the bottom, and you can pick which one you want from a colored point of view. And you can also get some usage reports. Remember the billing for usage. So you'll also get some usage information. But where it really gets good is where you create your own insights dashboard. So once New Relic receives the AWS budget information, you can create insights dashboards and data apps that use that information. Here's a high-level overview of 2 applications in AWS. This overview shows the number of EC2 instances that are part of each application, as well as the actual, forecasted, and limit cost. Also included is an infrastructure chart showing the average of some CPU metrics for each application. At the bottom of these 3 are 3 charts showing AWS billing information for services tagged with production and development. I've also included an AWS monthly billing budget. This is a great overview slide, great overview dashboard that lets high-level management or even application managers know what they're consuming within AWS. Switching over to a New Relic data app where you have multi-tabbed visibility into a specific piece of information, I'm showing just one application in this case. So I'm focusing on application A. Now I've added some synthetics and infrastructure monitoring information as well as to the billing information. I've also added some S3 bucket information if I have that as well. One note, didn't go through it earlier, but I wanted to add it now. So we may be monitoring by a specific application, but you do have the ability to also monitor by region and availability zone. AWS added region not too long ago, I think it was last week, but you can always do availability zone. So there's a good reason to be able to create a billing budget for a specific availability zone and or all of them within a region to get what's going on from that side. Let's switch over to New Relic Alerts. So let's say you have a budget that you're monitoring and you want to be notified if it goes over a specific threshold. You want to make sure you don't go above your budget. New Relic also offers alerts. And using alerts, you'll have the ability to receive notification when your AWS spend exceeds various levels. A simple example would be to be alerted when your AWS actual costs exceed a specific amount. You can also create alerts to notify you when you exceed 90%, warning of your specific budget amount, and maybe another one when you exceed 100%. That would, of course, be critical. Here's some real-world examples. This one is from a website migration dashboard that's been created for a customer. You can see that we have the on-prem website information up at the upper left. That's that first row. The second row is re-architected information in AWS, showing that it is definitely better in the cloud world. But once you've done that, you can also include information about the AWS services you're using. So I've included 9 widgets for this specific migration. And of course, one of them was the cloud budget. Now, if you look at the bottom middle of the lower right slide, you'll see some usage. So I have EC2 usage that was a budget. It was a usage budget. And you can see that I have well exceeded the budgeted amount that I had. Here's another real world example where your instances are not scaling down. Maybe you've done everything you can to make sure that you ramp up for production usage at a high level, but you want to make sure you ramp down as well. So the chart on the left shows that you're not deprovisioning the EC2 environments that were spun up properly. They're just not being spun down. And I have the example of an application forecast that shows where it is provisioning down. So you have a very great visualization from a forecasting point of view to make sure that your spend is going down when you're deprovisioning. So this chart from a forecast point of view would have helped this customer realize that they're not deprovisioning from a monetary point of view. Here's another real world example, detecting when you're over provisioned. So you would have a budget in AWS that showed you how you were spending per region or per availability zone. And you'll notice that some of your budgets might be high or you're exceeding your thresholds. Going over to some of the New Relic charts, you'll notice that we've had some really great millisecond availability response time, and it's a little too good. You know, it may not be that, we may not need that level of quickness. Or the CPU, the average CPU usage is very low. And in the cloud world, we want to keep our CPU usage high so we're consuming all the money we're spending in the cloud. And we can notice very quickly that in the East 1 region, we're using boxes that are just way too large. So this gives us a great visibility into how we can lower the spend in AWS based on the New Relic information. Okay, so getting back to those questions. How can I show how much this application is costing me in AWS? Using the tagging ability in AWS offers, yes, you can definitely answer this question using the tagging ability AWS offers along with an AWS budget. You can show not only your actual AWS spend per application, but also the forecasted amount and your limit. Question number 2. Can I use this information to help me reduce my AWS spend? Yes. Showing your AWS spend alongside New Relic product information, infrastructure, for example, you can better understand your AWS usage. If infrastructure shows that your EC2 instances are not heavily used, for example, low CPU usage, you can either reduce the size or remove these instances altogether until they're needed much more with your AWS needs. Question number 3, can I be notified when I cross various monetary thresholds? Yes. New Relic Alerts supports for multiple and varied threshold levels that will notify the proper people that your AWS spend has reached or breached specific levels. So in summary, New Relic AWS billing integration is very powerful in that it gives you and your business more visibility over what and how you use the AWS services that run your business. Displaying billing information alongside other New Relic information allows you to make better business decisions. Jackson, do we have any questions in the room?
Yes, we do. So Rico here has a question. What about deployments of multiple apps to a single host? How is the cost attributed?
That's a very good question. So when you have multiple apps to a single host, there may be some overlap. One of the things that I've been looking into is when you tag those services or that EC2 host, you might have to come up with a scheme that allows for multiple tagging of multiple applications. Because we all know that you can only have one key-based pair or only one application type key pair from a tag point of view. So I'm thinking of coming up with application 1 and you have that application 2 and you have that application 2. Now, from a billing point of view, there is a little bit of crossover there, and there isn't the ability to divide and conquer, if you will, and say that this host is hosting multiple applications. Now, you can have dashboarding visibility into the various tags that you have so that you can say that this application is part of a multi-application host environment, thereby giving the billing information a little bit different spin. I do want to point out, because it was Rocco had a great question there, that New Relic does not go into the level of budgeting or billing detail that there are some vendors out there that provide very detailed reports and go much deeper. We wanted to be able to bring in some high-level budgeting into the New Relic dashboard to give you a little bit more visibility into what you're already doing. And if you have to go a little deeper, definitely want to use some of those other vendors that is their business and going into. Thank you for that question.
Cool. And Kevin, just to dive into that a little bit more, what does New Relic Billing add that I can't do natively in AWS? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Actually, this is AWS native. So we get the information from the AWS budgeting dashboard within AWS. So you create the budgets within AWS, and our integration pulls those budgets out of AWS and brings it into our environment so that you can display that in our dashboards. So they are native. There's nothing, we're not adding anything to them. We're just pulling that information over and adding it to the dashboards you currently have.
Great, thank you. So Mark has a question here. The NR documentation indicates that the infrastructure agent must be deployed prior to configuring integrations. Do all agents need to be deployed in advance of integration configuration, or at least one agent?
It's a great question. I've had that from multiple people. A lot of times our service reps want to know and understand what that means. So when it says you have to have an infrastructure agent deployed, you really only have to have one infrastructure agent deployed. We'd like you to have as many as you need, but one is necessary. Not only that, but one agent is necessary, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, in anyone's cloud. You want to make sure one is deployed, and that now gives you the ability to add the integration to AWS. You must be at the pro level in order to have that integration, so you must be on a pro account. That's a great question.
Great, thank you. It doesn't look like we have any more questions, so we'll go ahead and end it there. Thank you everyone for your participation, and if you have any more questions, please feel free to submit them in the survey afterwards. Kevin and I would also be very excited to hear any feedback that you have for us to make our webinars better, more engaging, and if we can clarify any content. So thank you, Kevin, and thank you all attendees for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.